Hello everybody, welcome to episode 10 of the Dead Pixel podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mr. Brown, and this week the topic for discussion is the rise of UKIP. Couldn't be anything else really with the breaking into Parliament now. They've always been sort of, well, I won't say always, but in the recent years they've been members of European Parliament, but they have finally broken into, the Houses of Parliament. So that's what the discussion is tonight. Joining me this week, we've got Mr. White. How are you, Mr. White?
Thanks, guys. I'm really good. Nice to be here, as always.
And Mr. Orange, how are you, pal?
Yeah, not too bad. Nice to be here as usual.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So UKIP. Just a little bit of background for people that are not sure, because let's face it, they are still a fairly new party. I mean, they were founded in '93. This is quite interesting, actually. They were founded in 1993 by a guy called Alan Sked, a distinguished professor of international history at the London School of Economics. And he founded it because he was a staunch anti-European and felt that the Conservative Party wasn't really doing it for him. But this is quite interesting. He actually left and resigned UKIP once it got up and running because it had been infected by, in his words, racists. So the actual founder of UKIP left in principle because he said it had been infected by racists. So that's quite interesting.
That's quite an interesting fact, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we will talk about sort of the racist aspects of UKIP, which is sort of the mud that's always slung at him. Another interesting fact as well, they're actually funded almost exclusively by one guy, one multi-millionaire guy that fell out with the Conservatives. He used to be a funder of the Conservatives, among many. So they're actually backed by one multi-millionaire, a guy called Paul Sykes. Quite an interesting fella, actually. He's the son of an ex-miner, self-made man. So they can sort of go there if they want to in a working-class way. The thing is about Paul Sykes, he seems to be, as far as I can see, like a total obsessive with Europe. Like, he just doesn't want Britain in Europe, and that's why he fell out with the Conservatives, because of their policies in Europe. They basically pulled out all that money and started funding UKIP. So just as far as like, I don't know, just something doesn't sit right with me that you can be funded by one multi-millionaire guy with an anti-Europe agenda. Do you know what I mean? That to me doesn't sit right either. And then obviously Nigel Farage. Now I used to think, with the Tony Blairs of this world, that politics had taken a sort of a celebrity path. Yeah, I used to look at sort of some of the great Labour leaders and whatnot and think, God, they wouldn't be elected today. Look at the state of them. Yeah, but Nigel Farage, nobody can convince me he's a poster boy for anything. Do you know what I mean? The guy is not a lookalike in any way, shape or form. So that surprised me as well. That something so fast can have a leader that's, dare I say it, so ugly. So that is refreshing to me in a way, that someone who's not all like white teeth and slick black hair, the Tony Blair's types and the David Camerons of this world, can also take centre stage. So I am quite impressed with him in that sense. But this is a guy that happily, he gets photographed sort of smoking outside pubs, drinking bitter with the working men. But his actual background is the opposite to this. He's actually a public school educated, private educated fella whose work life is an investment banker who's worked at Wall Street. I mean, that's his background. He's a privately educated investment banker. Now, that is staggering to me, that the face of the everyman, the UKIP, the working man party, is a private educated investment banker. Party is funded by one multi-millionaire backer. So, anyway, anyone got anything to add on UKIP that they thought that was sort of quite interesting from what I've said there? Anyone looked at it in any way?
Yeah, I would say from starting out as just a one policy party, and from what I've read, it was brought about by a group of different parties or members of different parties with just one goal of being against European control.
Yeah.
It just seems to have
limited option party.
It seems it's developed without any real direction. That's the only way I can look at it.
Yeah.
It seems to have been infiltrated by people looking to make a name for themselves or
Hmm.
people looking to get into politics. I mean, and then sort of taking a bit of a meandering route to where it is today.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone who was there at the start would ever have envisaged, or I don't think it would have ever been their dream to be what UKIP is today. I
Yeah.
think there was even liberals in there. There were socialists even in the original
The
UKIP.
original
But
setup. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Orange. Just if you want to take the lead on the first question, and basically, what do you think of UKIP yourself, and what do you think their appeal is to the electorate at the moment?
my personal view of them as they are, well, I'm not a big fan. I can say that. I think they're basically they're almost the worst of both worlds, the worst of, conservative policies, privatization. I think they don't offer anything to the working class, but they're using the sort of the race divide to get working class people on board. And obviously, after the recession, racism is always a product of poverty and a product of hard times. And I think they've managed to be the only sort of party which is in the electorate which can harness that sort of vote. And I think that's why they're doing well in a lot of working class areas,
Okay.
obviously with their media spin. And let's face it, working class voters are generally people who are a bit more apathetic about voting anyway. They're not going to look into the real detail, and everything spun by the media is all they're going to really read
Yeah,
about. And I think they just view UKIP as a protest vote. I think that's their
Okay.
appeal.
So you actually think it's just a protest vote even now?
I think so. I think it may be a little bit further on, but I think it's still people thinking, oh well, Europe is deciding this, or the recession wasn't all Britain's fault. Um, Obviously, racists, we're always going to have, you know, the racist vote, especially in the situation we're in. I know, obviously, the economy's not what it was a few years ago, but even still, people are still feeling it more than ever at the bottom.
Yeah.
And it's always, scapegoat migrants, and UKIP are the party for people who want to do that.
Okay. So, Mr. White, I mean, you're obviously not from these shores,
mm,
and the lands that you are actually from, there is, right-wing parties that are more prevalent, let's say, than what we are used to here in the
yeah.
UK. Have you seen any sorts of similarities, or is any signs, sort of like, when you stick your toe in the water to say, right, well, like, I've seen this before, or I know where this might be heading, or, what is it you think, as somebody who's not from this country, what do you think?
Well, we have quite nationalistic parties where I came from. I'm not going to go to the details here, otherwise it's just going to be totally clear where I'm from. But the thing is that, yeah, nationalistic parties they usually don't bring any good to the country itself. As
Mhm.
far as I can see from what UKIP does is just basically slugging off the immigrants without any actual factual backing up,
Mhm.
saying that blame them, but you know against the statistics, where statistic actually tells that having immigrants in your country, it helps develop your economy.
Yeah.
So most of the things I hear about the UKIP, not being local, is the bad things.
Mhm.
And I'm really amazed how much coverage do they have in this country, because obviously there's lots of saying, very racist, not tolerant. You can hear those things, and then so I'm interacting about the UKIP party more about than about the conservatives and that kind of stuff, to be honest.
Okay.
So it catches my eye, and this is a bit disgusting. Why? Because anti-commercial is also a commercial, and actually, I think we need to stop covering the UKIP party as much as we do, because they
Mhm.
literally their agenda doesn't bring any good. Mr. Orange, please.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, and I think to a certain extent, the Conservatives actually, relish having UKIP around at the moment because it can deflect from them because they're kind of putting through the similar policies, and they've also got a similar view. I mean, I'll be one of the first people to accuse the Conservatives of being racist. I think. they just do it systematically, and they're good at PR, and they're politically correct in their language they use about it, but they're still underlined by racism. But I think UKIP's, anything they put through, they could say, well, UKIP are far worse, and
Mhm.
have a field day. Mr. Brown.
I hear what you're saying there about sort of working people and people in the mainstream sort of want quick fixes, and in the age of austerity, let's say, everybody wants that quick fix, don't they? And traditionally, historically, culturally, it's usually the minorities that sort of get the blame. If they weren't here, there'd be more jobs and blah, blah, blah. And I just think with the thing about UKIP, in regards to what their appeal is, it's this whole quick fix thing. But also as well, I think they've profited very much on their own name. I mean, this is a party that was invented in 1993. Now, how we understand terms like the Conservatives and Labour and the Lib Democrats, because they've been with us for hundreds of years, we associate their kind of politics sort of, and we either agree with them or we don't. But when you're a new party and you have a party like, the UK Independent Party, it's a little bit like Britain First or the British National Party. Straight away, it's an emotive name that pulls on the heartstrings. Do you know what I mean? You almost feel unpatriotic if you don't support, these parties at some superficial level, because it's like, who in Britain doesn't want Britain first? Who in Britain doesn't want to be a nationalist when when the chips are down, that type of thing. So I think straight away they're playing on the fact that the UK Independence Party is quite because it's not an embedded party in the conscious. I do think that people are like, oh right, straight away they've already got an affinity with them.
Is it called populism?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just emotive language that basically, from the moment you say their name, you're emotionally on their side, and then it's up to you to find out ways not to be on their side, rather than, not being on their side and finding out ways to be on their side by the name that they've created. You're emotionally and psychologically already on their side just by saying it, and then it's up to you to leave them. Mr. Orange?
Yeah, I just go along with that. I said the other thing with that is they've got this tag, and they've got people pulled on that, but and they can also use that to say, right, we're going against the establishment, because we're a new party, we represent something different, and they won't get leveled at. I mean, that's what I say with the protest fight, just because there's a lot of people, especially working class, myself included, middle class, working class, whatever, who are
We all are here, aren't
really, really apathetic on voting for any of the major parties,
Yeah.
because we've just seen that nothing changes. And I think they come in with that, their emotive language, an emotive name, pulling in that, and then saying we're against these. I think it feels to a lot of people, oh, well, they're going against the establishment.
Yeah, and just going back to Mr. White's point about, he's seen UKIP being mentioned on the news a hell of a lot. I think one of the issues that I've picked up recently about the Green Party, they're almost saying, well, listen, if you're going to give them all the time and space on air, yeah, why not, give the other parties as well? It's almost like the media has a very small paradigm, yeah, of who's allowed to be represented in parties, and it's usually to do with who's the richest, yeah. I would agree. I mean, UKIP, as much as okay, they've got one member of parliament now, and they've got 20 odd members of the European Parliament. They're still not a very big party. They're still only in the really only in the league of the Green Party, and yet the Green Party don't seem to have any voice at all in the media. So it's almost rather than I just probably turn that on its head slightly by saying, rather than giving UKIP time or taking that time away, fair enough, give them time. If there's enough people voting for them, then in a democratic society, the democratic so-called media, then they should be represented on the media. But also give others that time as well. Don't be just so sucked into the three parties and then this one on the outside slightly. I also think they've been very, very lucky in the fact that the Liberal Democrats now are pretty much been decimated as a third party. So I think there's a slot there anyway for a third party. Just going back to Mr. Orange's point about how the Tories might actually be quite pleased that the UKIP's there, I honestly don't see that. For every UKIP vote, that's a lost Tory vote, because in my opinion, there's not that much difference between the Tories and the UKIP. In fact, as evidence, I would suggest that you look on the defectors. You look at all the or pretty 95% of all the defectors that have gone to UKIP have come from the Conservatives. Now that in itself is quite interesting. Now I'm a very, very political person, yeah, on the left. There's very, very few parties. Just because, say I joined a party now, yeah, just because that party didn't fulfil my hopes and needs, that doesn't mean that I would be able to just quit one day and join another one the next, because parties are supposed to be different from each other, and that's what's appealing in democracy. You've got different ideas. Now, the very fact that someone from the Tory party of 15, 20 years can leave and the next day join UKIP tells me that they are so close ideologically that it's just ridiculous. It's like to me, it's the sort of I do agree with Mr. Orange in the fact that they're like the Tory party that have thrown the PC book in the bin and feel slightly liberated in their sort of more darker thoughts, so they feel like it's almost a badge of honour for UKIP to come out and say we disagree, we don't want immigration, we want, we don't want this Sharia law taking over, but the type of things that the Tories would feel a little bit, can't really say that. They're more liberating. And I think the problem is they're getting support for saying those things, so they're amplifying the messages that's getting them the support. One of the interesting things is, we'll come on to it a bit later, is they do actually have Muslim and Indian members, prominent members. But I'll come to that in a minute. Mr. Orange.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I concede on a certain level, there is a lot of Conservatives who are lost across. There also seems to be sort of figures who kind of straddle both parties. I've been reading a little bit. I failed to come up with the names at the moment, but people who've been in the Conservative Party but helping fund the UKIP party or UKIP. And yes, there is that moving across. I think Conservatives will be happy that the main opposition, or not the main opposition, but the kind of protest opposition, kind of agrees with them. But I think they'll also be happy that, I mean, I personally think that Labour are going to lose quite a lot of votes to UKIP as well. And I think it's interesting. UKIP seemed to be, at the last elections anyway, or these recent elections, seem to be taking a lot of votes in working class areas, and more than the Lib Dems ever have done in these areas.
Yeah. Just one thing there though, guys. UKIP spent 1.5 million on billboards for the last elections. 1.5 million on billboards. I don't know if you ever saw any of those billboards, but it was all scaremongering about EU workers are coming for your jobs. There was that guy, wasn't he, in like the builder's outfit, looking a bit downtrodden. Probably because some Polish guy has just taken his job. That's what he was basically saying, yeah? But I mean, you think about this, right? If there is actually a problem in society, and I mean, and it's sticking out like a sore thumb, which is what they're claiming immigration to be, would you actually need £1.5 million to spend on a propaganda campaign of that particular topic? Surely it would be so obvious that you would only need to spend maybe a little bit just to point out. I mean, that to me is oversaturation.
£1.5 million pounds. I mean, for me, for the one of they're not major party, but major parties spend much more, is it?
Not on billboard campaigns. No, this isn't the whole budget. This is just for posters on billboards.
Okay.
That's all it is. It's not the full total. This is literally posters on billboards. So these areas that they're basically trying to sort of seduce, they just normal guys, that are not really into politics, that know their friend who's not got a job, or they've not got a job. Yeah, they basically walk down the street and they're seeing this sort of like, I don't even know if it should be that. It's basically like, so you're a manual worker, you're a manual worker, you're out of a job, and your mate's out of a job. You walk down the street, there's a billboard there of a manual worker, with his head in his hands, and there's a big sign that says, EU workers are coming for your jobs, right?
Yeah.
politics is a hell of a lot more complicated than that. But when you're voting, yeah, what is it? It's ridiculous. They simplify things to the absolute ficklest, basest emotions in humanity, and say this person is the problem. Yeah, throw this person out, we have no problems. Mr. Orange.
I was going to say, I think you're almost expecting them to want a rational decision from the public there. I mean, you're highlighting the main problems with political campaigns and in terms of, voting, that it's not down to getting everybody to have a rational decision, have an informed opinion, because everything's down to just what's the appeal, what can you use to emotionally pull someone to do something, especially the target. I mean, I don't think I think the terms target audience or target electorate are interchangeable there, because
Yeah.
they're targeting people who won't have the time or the inclination and
Mm-hmm.
are apathetic about politics,
Yeah.
um, with something simple to get them to vote, because they know they're not going to read the manifesto, they're not going to read the policies,
No.
not going
No.
to have an informed opinion.
There was a radio station the other day. I don't know if you guys actually saw this article. It's doing the rounds. It was a DJ saying, "Can any UKIP supporter come in and tell me why you support UKIP?" Yeah. So the guys come on there. UKIP this, UKIP that. So he asked him about policies. Like, what's their policies on education? What's their policy? He did not know a single policy connected to UKIP's manifesto. Not a single fucking policy.
And this is the guy ringing in
This is the
saying,
guy ringing in knowing why they support UKIP.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
mean, you think about that, yeah? That it's almost like a spell. It's almost like they've got these people under a trance. It's almost like saying, we know politics is confusing, we know it's in depth, but guess what? Just look into our eyes, not around our eyes, into our eyes, yeah? And we will tell you in a simple slogan that will make everything right. We will give it to you in a sentence, yeah? And as long as you believe that sentence, everything will be all right. I mean, Mr. White, yeah? I'm not saying this would happen, but the channel that you chose to come into this country and work your bollocks off for your family, right, is actually under attack. Okay?
Oh yeah.
It's under attack. Now, what do you think? I mean, when you came to the UK, right? I'm assuming you thought, well, what was? I tell you what. Just to put you on the spot for a moment, Mr. White. What was your impressions, okay, of coming to the UK, and why did you come to the UK to find work and start a life? Go on.
Well, for me personally, it was just a matter of circumstances come up because basically I've lost a job in my home country, but it just happened, and I've been offered by my friends who was working in Northern Ireland. Said, why won't you come over here and just try yourself here? Because what happened? They knew I had really good English skills, so there would be no problem for me to communicate because I was working as a translator back home. So I was thinking, yeah, well, why not? And I came here, and basically, yeah, I've met a lots of racism, lots of, 5-year-olds saying, go back home for him, something like that. Obviously, you don't blame them. You're thinking about their parents, though.
Yeah.
Impose such. Obviously, those kids are growing up in the environment where they see discussion between parents about the immigrants coming and taking work and that kind of stuff. And obviously the thing is my camp split on two. Lots of people was really generally kind and approaching, and some people were like just dickheads.
Yeah.
So the first impression was quite, especially, I've been that kind of a, uplifted, new country, new experience, for me it was quite interesting, especially, I'm from the working class family, so, and, all my time I've been in UK, I always worked. I never
Yeah.
claimed benefits. For example, only one time when I went to Manchester, I've stayed, unemployed for a month. I was looking for work, I've applied for benefit and never received it, basically.
Okay.
And not because I've been refused, but because, it was a bit, just too hard for me around the head to
Yeah.
get the paperwork sorted and everything. So it's not easy for the foreign person to claim benefit as well.
Yeah.
It's
Which.
easier for me personally. It was easier for me to find the work quicker
Mhm.
anywhere to support my family.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was a mixture of an adventure, the fact you'd lost a job,
Yeah,
you had a connection in Northern Ireland, a good friend there, yeah,
yeah.
who said there might be some work over there. You've never claimed apart from a month when you were out of work, yeah, and you've been here how long, roughly?
Uh, it's going to be 6 years, more than 6 years now.
6 years. So you've not come over with an agenda. You've not come over to
Yeah,
push your culture on anybody else. It's just basically a human story, yeah, and you've ended up here. Now,
yeah.
what UKIP seem to forget is as well, this is a two-way street. Now, let me just get my figures there. Something like 5.5 million British people. Let me just find it here for you. That live permanently abroad. Something like in the last 10 years. I don't want to get my figures wrong, so let me just find that. Yeah, 1 second.
I thought I spoke to you already this morning, and you gave me a good figures as well in regards to the studies of the influence of the immigrants as well. The economical. Is that the figures you're going to give us?
But no, it's just basically the point was that this isn't just everybody wants to come to Britain and it's the land of milk and honey and everybody in Britain stays in Britain. These British people going abroad using exactly the same system
Oh
that's
yeah.
being here it says almost 5.5 million British nationals live permanently abroad. Okay, that's bigger than the size of Scotland. It's not just a one-way street of immigrants coming to Britain and taking all our jobs. 5.5 million British nationals have gone the other way, which is more that's in Scotland. So, they are basically using the same benefits and having the same adventures and having the same economic reasons going the other way into Europe.
Mhm.
So, this is never mentioned. It's almost as if like, oh, Britain's so brilliant, nobody would ever want to leave it and everybody wants to come and take our jobs. More than people in Scotland have gone the other way. So this is a two-way street. It's just a natural part of A, being human, yeah, B, being in Europe, yeah, and C, just having like for example, yours is adventurous and it's economic, yeah, and it's all these
Yeah.
types of things. It's not just one thing. It's not like I want to go to Britain for one single reason, and that's simply because that's where I can make money, and I'm not going to change, and I'm not going to assimilate. I'm just going to go and
Yeah.
make money and take jobs. It's just a fairy tale. Those sort of stories exist. People are not that black and white. People are a mishmash of personalities and emotions and this type of thing. And people move around the world for multiple reasons. Mr. Orange.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I mean, I've never really understood this idea that having too many or having immigrants is going to drain resources because the more people you have, the more human resources you have in a country, and it's not like we're running out of land or anything like that.
Yeah.
It just seems ridiculous. It's just okay. So I've read reports which showed what the population growth would have been in Britain had immigration and emigration, you know, if both of those were completely halted. And I don't think that the results were very much different than they are. But the whole point of it, even if you did have more people, unless you had people who weren't working or a proportion who just didn't work, which is the opposite of the case. We've got people, coming over and working, which is providing resource. I mean, the NHS wouldn't run without immigration.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, the arguments just don't add up
Yeah.
for me.
A good fact that it's 24% of medical staff in the NHS is foreign people, right?
Yeah.
Originally foreign-born people, which is 24% is quarter of all staff in NHS.
Oh, totally. He couldn't run without immigration. But I'll tell you what, guys, we're definitely going to do a podcast
I
on
just
its own on
Just
immigration.
one
Yeah?
thing to the Mr. Browns. I mean, a really good point about if you hold immigration, it will actually would hold economics. I think it's the same stupid thing you would ever say about, for example, China. You say, "Oh, look, China has so much people. It's definitely gonna help hold their economics growing. No, it's gonna do otherwise. It's gonna help the economy grow even quicker and become super large and super big. Same in here.
And Mr. Orange made that point, yeah, about human resources, yeah,
Yeah,
that's it, yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that's how silly it sounds if you put, for example, China, which is a great example that there is overpopulated, but it doesn't harm the economy. It actually boosts
India as well. Okay, guys, like I said, we will do our own podcast on immigration because it's obviously something that we could do a full podcast on. But we had to touch on it because obviously it's part of what UKIP's sort of fundamentals are. Just going back to UKIP though, just to confront the racist aspect, because for most people that don't like UKIP, I want to slag off UKIP and do a bit of mudslinging. It always seems to fall on the racist sort of ticket. Yeah, it seems to be the easiest way to attack them. Now, there's a slight contradiction here because we've already admitted that their appeal is that they are racist. So if your tactic to put them down in any way is to say, don't vote for them, they're racist, well,
just make them better.
Straight away there's a contradiction there, isn't there? But just go into the racist aspect of it, just to see if it's actually something that's relevant and real. Probably the most interesting part for me is that UKIP is part of a group in Europe called Europe of Freedom and Democracy, which is actually a collection of far-right and extreme far-right groups throughout Europe, of which Nigel Farage is co-president of the group. Now, I can go on, but that's pretty much conclusive, isn't it? If Nigel Farage is the co-president of a collection of right-wing and extreme right-wing groups around the world who share ideas and policy ideas and such like, that to me is like condemning, it really is condemning. So there's other things as well, like we've got a peer there, Lord Pearson, a peer called Lord Pearson. Now he's actually come out and said for the record about Muslims. Now I think we need to sort of, if we're going to talk about racism, yes, there is this aspect of sort of European immigrants, Polish people and whatnot. But I think in these times, most people are racist towards Muslims. What do you reckon, guys? Do you agree? Most people in the UK, when they're being racist, I would say the vast majority of the cases is a racism against Muslims. Is that something you guys have come across?
I would personally say, yeah, I'd say in 95% of the racism I hear is directed at Muslims.
Yeah. I mean, I would honestly say the same. So I think today, if we're talking about racism, we're really talking about Muslims. And the UKIP peer, Lord Pearson, he's quoted as saying, the Muslims are breeding 10 times faster than us. I don't know at what point they will reach a number that we are so big that we are no longer able to resist the rest of their demands. Now, this is a Lord, okay, and this is what he said. Now, in regards to Muslims in Britain, I don't know if you guys know the percentage of Britain that is actually Muslim.
Something like 2% or something like.
No, it's actually 5. It's actually 5%. The average person on the street apparently think it's up to 20 or 30%, which is absolutely crazy, isn't it? Now, this is a peer. Now, this is a UKIP peer, Lord Pearson, who's saying things like this, and there's only 5% of the population. And what you need to remember is, Britain is an ex-colonial power. Now, we used to run India and Pakistan, and parts of Africa that have got absolutely hundreds of millions of Muslims. Yeah. Now, by being a colonial power or an ex-colonial power, is it not morally, ethically, economically right that you allow a certain percentage of the people? I mean, we absolutely raped their country of any wealth or anything of any value that we could, for up to hundreds of years in some cases. And now we're turning around and saying, these Muslims coming over here, they wouldn't actually be over here if we didn't effectively go over there and impose our way of life and our economic system on them countries. Now, the economic system we imposed on them was the economic system of capitalism, which is a system, I'm not going to capitalism too much, it's a system of haves and have-nots, It's a system that relies on haves and have-nots. So in the West, we are the haves, and in the East, predominantly they are the Knots. Okay, so where do you go to find some capital in the capitalist system? Because this system cannot run with everybody equal, everyone millionaires, because that means that you've just got hyperinflation and everything's worthless. So they're obviously going to come to this country, and they've already got colonial ties because we went over there and imposed our systems on them. So to me, it's totally two-faced to say, I'm sick of these Muslims coming over here. It's only 5% of the population. We were over there for hundreds of years in some cases. We've basically enslaved them to an economic system, and now that they've come chasing it, we're saying, oh, I'm really sorry, no, that system's only for us. We've left them with nothing.
Really good example, Mr. Brown.
We've left them with nothing. They go back to their country, it's still the same system as ours, except they've got less. There's more of them with less capital.
Yeah.
And I think people really need to wake up, as to what they are here for. I haven't met a single immigrant, and I have worked with hundreds in my lifetime. I haven't met a single immigrant that would not prefer to live in their homeland. So if they prefer to live where they came from, there must be something else driving them here. And it's not to spread Islam. It's to get capital for their families. They're human beings at the end of the day. Yeah, Muslims are not just Islam. Yeah, they're normal people, working people, hard-working people. I worked with loads of Muslims in my lifetime. Yeah, some are lazy, just like some English. Some I don't like, some I love. Yeah, they're just human people, and they're all enslaved in this economic system. Yeah, and that is why they are here. And we really do need to give them a break, in my opinion. But back to UKIP. Sorry about that rant there, guys. Back to UKIP. So, okay, for me personally, I think that the very fact that Nigel Farage is a co-president of an extreme right group, of collective group of parties in Europe, pretty much is damning for me. They've also been, people talk about equal rights with women. Let's just say women. Now, Farage himself was criticised by a member of his own party who threatened to leave because he said he was an anti-woman Stalinist dictator whose view is that women should be in the kitchen or in the bedroom, right? So they're not even like a progressive party within themselves, yeah? They've hardly got any women members, and the ones that they've got are complaining about the fact that they've got these anti-women, views. He said like throwaway comments like about lap dancing and all that for us, saying, oh yeah, I don't have time for lap dancing these days, but I used to go to them. This type of thing, a total disgrace. Mr. Orange?
I think one of the things which does appeal to people, and I think that's part of the thing they're doing, is these throwaway comments. I think a lot of the people are just, oh, they got away with that.
Yeah, but the thing is as well, I think there's a serious lack of feminism in this country. Now, really, if a leader of a party is saying things like, oh, lap dancing, oh yeah, I don't get time to go these days, I used to go and stuff like that. Well, half the electorate are women. But because people are so consumed about this one policy of immigration, it's almost like they're willing to forgive anything else. Do you know what I mean? Like, what role in society would women have in a UKIP utopia? You've got to ask yourself that. Do you know what I mean? It sounds to me like it's the 1950s housewife. So okay, you get UKIP, that's okay, right? You get rid of immigration, that's okay. Trust me, your economy will go down if you care about those types of things. But also, you're back in the kitchen, love, do you know what I mean? It's one of those, it's like, you've got to think about things more than a single policy. Now, yeah, Farage is one guy. He's a leader of a party, he's not the party, he's not a dictator, so, I might have been slightly unfair there, but the thing is, I just find this sort of goes to the bookies at the weekend, drinks bitter and smokes, and the woman in the kitchen type persona. I just cannot see the appeal in the 21st century. It's going against everything I thought people had evolved into. Quite a shock for me, really. But here's a bit of one. Going back to the racism aspect, guys. Now there is a little spanner in the works here, and I want to get your thoughts on this. They do actually have Indian and Muslim members. Now, by law, you can't actually have a party and not be open to non-whites. So there is a law, in fact, that you couldn't be an all-white party anyway. I mean, they could be, but that they can't not allow people to join of another race. So there is that sort of aspect to it. But they do have a couple of prominent, fairly prominent Muslim and Indian members.
Yeah.
One of them's a business spokesman, a guy called Amjad Bashir, who was actually for 15 years with the Tories. This goes back to our point about, you can be 15 years with one party and then in a heartbeat join UKIP, so because the Tories and UKIP are so close. Now, he's quite an interesting fella, to say the least. He's actually, in one of his personal business sort of rants, as talking about taking away workers' rights because it's making it impossible to employ workers. And he actually has highlighted in his own little manifesto things like maternity leave, paternity leave, holiday entitlement, working time directives and minimum wage. He actually thinks that these stand in the way of people getting jobs because they have too many rights. So he's a fairly interesting character. But it's funny, he doesn't actually say, he just says he's got Pakistani roots. So I'm not 100% sure if he's a practicing Muslim or not. Mr. Orange.
Mr. Orange.
Yeah, I also think there's got to be a certain amount that he's looking out just from maybe his business perspective rather than anything else.
Yeah. So money is his religion, basically. Yeah. And wherever can get him ahead into it. I mean, you're going to get these. You get. I don't know if you've got what I call it assimilated, but you get people of certain backgrounds, and somebody's race and culture is not an issue whatsoever. And as Mr. Orange has just stated there, if you are a businessman, business is your religion. And if you think a business model, a certain business model, or a certain party can push a certain business model, yeah, I think race can sometimes not be an issue at all, and you can maybe turn a blind eye to some things in order to justify other things.
I mean, I guess UKIP don't claim themselves to be racist. They are a
No.
racist party by the fact of their policies and the characters they have in them, but they do, from their manifesto, they're set out to be neoconservative. So I guess from a business perspective, I could see why that would appeal to someone like that.
Yeah. I mean, I say they have got some Asian candidates, and also they have got a prominent one at left. I won't say highest ranking, but one of their stars, youth stars, she actually left, a girl called Sanya Jeet Dande. She quit because she said she had realised that UKIP was actually pandering to the racist vote in order to get those votes. Now, she actually left in protest. So it's not all plain sailing. We do have another guy there as well, Ronnie Singh, who's a Sikh. Now, this one is slightly different because he's sort of anti-Muslim, but if you actually know the history of sort of the Sikhs, they are traditionally sort of enemies of Muslims anyway, I think it's mainly based on the partition. I think there was hundreds, if not thousands, of Sikhs killed by Muslims and vice versa. So that one's a little bit skewed.
Hence you have Sikhs in the EDL, don't you?
You do. And you know what as well, it's coming on to my next point, that with UKIP. Now, in effect, if they are not your extreme racist party, which I actually don't believe that they are, I'm not going to lump them in with the BNP because they know how to play the game better. But the thing is, it is a little bit like the EDL, like you said there. Now, if you were to listen to the rhetoric of the EDL, the leader there, Tommy Robinson, is his fake name. I think he's called Stephen Loxley or something. That's his real name. Now, I think they've been dispersed now. But what he was saying is, we're not racist. Yeah, we are happy that there's multiculturalism in society now. But what they were against was a medieval form of Islam. Yeah. So on the actual box of the EDL, it seems that they're not racist. They're actually, they're very inclusive to people of mixed race and everything. But we're just against this very specific, what they term medieval form of Islam. The problem is, once you open the floodgates, you cannot stop the racists pouring in. Yeah, and I think with UKIP, that's the thing. It's a gateway. And also, if we move over to that sort of right, okay, it's not the extreme right, but it is the right. What it does is it becomes normalised, so that the extreme right no longer seems so crazy and so out of touch, because you're sort of got this normalised centre now, which is right wing. But not only that, because you've moved over to the right, once that becomes normalised, the left seem crazy, So right now it could go either left or right, but both extremes seem to be quite out there and quite off the wall. But if we move over to the right permanently, just slightly, it makes all the left ideas seem that little bit crazier, and all those extreme right ones seem that less bit crazier. And that, to me, is a very, very dangerous precedent that we may set. People need to be aware that things that we find abhorrent right now, we might not find abhorrent tomorrow if we have someone like UKIP in power, because it will just become normalised. It will just become like the next step. Whereas right now it's 5 steps away, it could just be 2 steps away in 5 years. Do you know what I mean? And that in itself, to me, is something that needs to be fought. But lastly, guys, I'm talking about UKIP. I can tell none of us are actual supporters of it.
Yeah.
But why is
it would be nice to have an opinion from them there.
Yeah, but why is he no UKIP of the left, so to speak? Has anyone got an opinion on this one? I mean, everybody I meet seems to be sort of liberal left. I don't know if it's just the company I keep. No, I tell a lie. Not everybody. However, the vast majority of people that I meet, and you get to speak to know people, I would say the vast majority are more liberal left. But and yet we've got UKIP. So, Mr. Orange, have you got any thoughts on why we have UKIP, but we don't have an alternative on the left, sort of left of Labour, in any great power?
I think, well, obviously money, having a few big donators is the main thing. Politics and modern politics in this country, it is all about money. It's all about connections too. I think the people who are generally liberal left are more willing to vote for Labour, uh, basically because they see that as the only way of keeping Conservatives out of government. I think anything further than that is there's a big gap left of Labour which needs to be filled. I think the media bosses, people who have power and influence, don't mind UKIP so much because they know there's always going to be a third party or a fourth party or a protest party or whatever. And I think they're quite happy. They're far more happy for it to be a right wing one than a left wing one. And I think that's why maybe they get a bit more attention than say the Green Party or any other left wing party would. I think there's also a massive failure of the left in this country.
Okay.
I don't think that goes without saying.
Yeah. Well, I think you've brought up two excellent points there. Actually, I think the first one is the funding. I think any party of the West now, you take the States as being the extreme example. It's all about the money. It's all about the funding. We talked before about the 1.5 million just on billboards for an election. For a party like UKIP, the size of UKIP, it's a staggering amount. And also as well, I've always thought, when it comes to right-wing parties, they have 2, maybe 3 issues, right? Immigration, anti-Europe, these types of things, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 more. But they're very, very simplified answers to very, very complex situations. And I think the left, because, dare I say it, a more intellectual breed, yeah, the intellectual literature of the left far, far, far outweighs the intellectual literature of the right. And I think it's because we appreciate that life is very, very complex, and we have more than one agenda, we have more than one policy, yeah, and we're worried about more than 1 or 2 things. So I think it's very, very hard for people on the left to sort of get this out to the masses, because we're not about 1 or 2 things, we're about a multitude of things, and the depth of which we actually discuss these things sometimes can turn people off. It can sound quite elitist. Mr. Orange?
I agree with you. I know I'm harking back to the media again, but as a population, we've been led to have short attention spans and want everything now. I mean, yeah, it's a topic for another show with the whole media, but firstly, people are working so much that they don't have time to sit and think about these things. Yeah. And you're right, the left is backed up with a lot of theory. And that's its best point, but also in sort of popularity politics, it's, as you say, going unnoticed.
Yeah. Yeah, even people did have time to contemplate these things more. There is a certain level of, it seems to have to be a certain level of education to get to a lot. And this is a failure of some philosophers and some economists of the left. It's almost like some of them use fancier words than they should. You know, it's almost like a badge of honour to make it sound as complex as possible sometimes. It's almost like the only thing we have on the left is our intellect. But I think we need to simplify, not our solutions, because we can't go down the path of the right by simplifying the solutions. So it's not about simplifying the solutions, but making them a little bit more digestible. Also, as well, with the left, it's very, very fragmented. It's a very fragmented left, whereas on the right, they're very easily unified because they're only after 2 or 3 things. So it's quite easy to unify people of a right-wing mind, whereas on the left, because it's quite intellectual and because of so many different fights and so many different agendas, that it's very easy to separate into, not warring groups, but people can leave one group to another because of slight differences within, you know, this and that, whereas on the right, only 1 or 2 policies, so, you know, what is he really to discuss? You know, simple answers, 1 or 2 policies, let's all stick together. On the left, fragmented, loads of policies, loads of depth, loads of intellect, and also as well a lot of losses, a lot of failures on the left as well. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. We have some dirty words such as communism that the right. Well, then again, no, I take that back. The right's got fascism. I think that's equal, if not more. You know, so you haven't got that. But I do think there's a fragmentation on the left that you don't have on the right. There's a lot more policies, a lot more depth, and I think Mr. Orange is absolutely right. That is our blessing, but also our curse. So the future, guys, does UKIP stand a chance? The way that society's going, in your view, is UKIP something that's on the horizon, or you still think it's a protest vote, or do you think it's going to shake up anything, or do you reckon, Mr. White?
You know, the rise is exactly what I think. There's just too much panic in regards to the Euro Parliament election when they won 24% of 24 seats out of the 74, were quite a huge amount. But I don't think they're going to do really well within the country.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to rise above 5% whatsoever.
Okay.
Literally, at the moment, they're really unpopular more than they're popular. Obviously, unpopularity, as I said, is still a commercial, but I don't see them becoming a big power so far because, I mean, this country runs by the huge economic experts. They know that the immigration is good for them, cheap labor force and everything. So, you know, obviously, they're going to support that. And literally, UKIP might come with 5%, but not more. Also, as you said, there is a warning at the moment in regards to the rise of the huge, extreme nationalism, far right, which is really concerning. You know, it's quite warning to see the rise of the extremism groups and far right and pro-nationalistic parties taking effect. Because for me, it's degrading the humanity, degrading and falling behind to the barbarity, which we supposed to overconquer 1,000 years ago. But no, time after time, this idea comes to life, and then all of a sudden you face yourself in a situation where you're surrounded by radicalized mad people, and you don't know how it happens. It happened the way it happens here in regards to the UKIP. Starting really easy, but then suddenly they're working on populism and coming out with something worse. So far I don't see any trouble.
Okay.
But you never know what comes next. It might be bad.
Okay, Mr. Orange, what do you reckon?
I think the warning signs are there, definitely. I think they have the capability at the next election to be the third party, and I think if they did, that would be a real worrying step. I'm not sure whether it will happen yet, but Liberal Democrats look pretty dead in the water at the moment.
Yeah.
And from what I saw on the last votes, there wasn't the seats being claimed by UKIP, but the numbers were there, and that's really the worrying thing, that the numbers in the electorate was there.
Mm-hmm.
I would be a little worried.
As Mr. Brown said, it's all connected in regards to the social situation in the country, and it's the worst situation for the past 7 years, as far as I understand.
So that's the thing. Well, then surely they're thinking this is the time for them. I mean,
Yeah.
and economies take time to grow and obviously crash again. But I think the next election will be UKIP's make or break. But I think there's a real possibility because okay, they're painted as, you know, racist and that in the papers, but they don't have the same reputation as the BNP. They have, you know, there's the same racism there, but they don't have that reputation.
No,
And
no.
Mm-hmm.
because they're going on the back of an EU, a withdrawal from EU rather than an actual outright just blanket racism. I mean, I know their policies and individual scapegoating is, but they've got to the point where which the BNP never could,
Yeah,
which was having some sort of respectability. And obviously having politicians come over from other major parties only gives it that,
yeah,
and having the money behind it. I think there's a lot of people who are saying this is a real party. It shouldn't be a real party, but I think it's growing, and like I say, I think it's a real threat for the next election.
yeah. And I have to echo most of that, to be honest, Mr. Orange, unfortunately. I think the battle is going to be, before the next general election, it seems to be on the left, even though it is fragmented, it seems to be a sort of a coherent movement to at least, even though we are fragmented, to have sort of a slogan or a saying to try and show people, you know, you should have anger, and there are targets to vent that anger, but rather than target the poorest and most vulnerable in society, you know, look at the 1%. Now, we've all heard this all about the last 5 years. It's all about the 1%, isn't it? And highlighting, you know, where the accumulation of wealth in any nation is. Yeah. If you want things to change, you have to release wealth. Unfortunately, that's the system we're in. Wealth is what creates, you know, good things as well as bad things, but social things and what you have to release wealth. And the accumulation of wealth is in this 1% of society that's never budging. Yeah, they own everything, they run everything, and they have more money than all of us put together. You know, and instead of looking for easy scapegoats, yeah, you've got to understand that, you know, immigrants and whatnot are some of the most poorest and vulnerable in the world, never mind in our society. So there seems to be a collective movement to at least drill that into people's collective, yeah. And I would suggest to anybody that deals with people that are anti, you know, immigration, just to let them think about that for a second. You know, releasing funds is what will sort problems out. Yeah, immigrants have no funds to release. You get them out of the country, you're still left with everything, all the problems that was there before they were there, because they don't have anything to actually give. So for me, it's all about the left having a sort of a unified voice, yeah, and getting people to focus on the 1%ers of this world, not, you know, the poor immigrants that are coming over. And let's be honest. Let's be honest, right? There's no black and white. There's immigrants that come over to this country, they take the piss. Yeah, these British people go over to other countries, they take the piss. Yeah, there's freeloaders in every nation, in every country, all shapes and sizes, all races. Yeah, but you have to look at the majority of immigrants in this country, and it seems the statistics and what I've had in my own personal experience, and you guys as well, the vast majority are just here to do their best, yeah, pay their taxes and everything. Okay. In regards to UKIP general election, like I say, if the left can't at the very least get a unified voice, if not a party, to take on UKIP, which I don't think they will because they won't have the funding, and if that message fails, then I could quite easily see UKIP becoming the third party. I think the Liberal Democrats are pretty much finished. In fact, I bet my life that the Liberal Democrats are finished and the general election will wipe them out. So, okay, we're left with UKIP, let's say, as the third party. Now, hopefully, as in anything, there's always hope, that may galvanise the left. If there's clear lines in the sand between who your enemies are, may well galvanise the left. But if it doesn't, then we're talking about a right swing here, guys. And me personally, I always put my faith, not in the system, I put my faith in people. So as much as it swings to the right, as any country's shown, as Hitler's shown and whatnot, there'll always be a breaking point. So, it's not all lost. So let's not lose despair if UKIP do make a few gains. It might just make things a bit more clearer in regards to what we're actually fighting for. Might put a few of the fragmented left-wing groups, might put a few of their sort of arguments to one side and, become unified. So we never know. There might be light at the end of the tunnel. But personally, I'm with Mr. Orange on this one. I do think they are going to make gains in the next general election, looking at current evidence. So are they here to stay? Who knows? But they're here to stay in the short term, as far as me and Mr. Orange are concerned. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for tonight. Have you guys got anything else you want to bring up about UKIP, guys?
Nope.
No. Apologies for any rants that have gone on tonight. But please, if you've got any comments or any questions or anything you disagree with or agree with, please leave us, some comments. Actually, guys, there was a comment from last week regarding the death penalty.
Okay.
Yes, I will just go into that thing and get that for you. Okay, guys, Mark Williams as well. Interesting discussion. This is obviously for last week's discussion on the death penalty. I have never supported the death penalty in our society because of the risk of judicial errors, police corruption. Please believe me, this does happen. I was arrested back in the late 70s with a couple of friends. The lies told and the divergence from correct procedure was startling. Afterwards, I made a complaint for wrongful arrest. After seeing altered statements and more lies, I realised how corrupt the British police could be. This was back in the 70s. Fortunately, since those days, there have been many changes in procedures. So even in our society, corruption can exist. I hope this supports the case for no to the death penalty. So there's an actual real-life experience there of somebody who claims he was trying to be set up by the police for a murder. And this was in the 70s. Now, let's not forget, guys, the actual last time that we hung someone was only in the 60s. So it could have actually been on the cards for that. So there you go. All right, guys, any more questions or comments for this week, please look us up on the Dead Pixel podcast on Facebook or the Dead Pixels on Twitter. I do apologise again for any rants. It's quite an emotive subject, this one, UKIP. So thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys for being with us. Bye.